Well, it's an honor and privilege to be asked to be a TEDx speaker. Only in America would an immigrant, a first-generation immigrant, would have this opportunity. And it just so happens that we happen to be in the grittiest city in America, Boston. This is where the revolution started. This is where the first shot of revolution was fired. And of course, the famous Boston Tea Party, which was the very basis of our Constitution that established no representation without taxation. And it was something that they were one of the first ones who had the courage to say, if you're going to tax us, we want representation also. So while I can't talk about our forefathers, even though they were the epitome of immigrants that built this country, including Paul Revere, whose father was Apollo Rivero, who came here with the same dreams and aspirations that immigrants come to the shores of America today, to have a better life and to give a better life to their children. And while I can't speak about my forefathers, but I can talk to you about my grit and my sense of survival and what it took me to be an upstanding citizen of this country, and that would be the basis of my presentation today. I grew up in a fairly normal middle-class Muslim family in Pakistan, came to US in the 70s as a student on the western shores of our great country. And it was a cultural shock, if you would. A new language, a new culture, a new background, leaving my family, my friends, and my sense of belonging. And on the other hand, I was invaded by this enormous pop culture, this flagrant display of wealth, an unbridled lifestyle that was complete foreign to me. And that was my first test of grit, as to how do I process this? Where do I go with it? Do I run with it? Do I become a subscriber? Or do I stick with my core values, which may not be the most glamorous and perhaps old-fashioned in some way, but I had to make that choice. I dug deep in my own well and fixed my moral compass. And that was the time that I made the decision that the values that I have is the values that I'm going to keep, because the reason I came to this country was not to be a part of this process, but to take only the good, but stay with the core values that I had, which was work ethics, integrity, honesty, and take advantage of the opportunities which would be presented to me in this new country. Well, the process went on. I finished my education, and then I did fairly well professionally in my career. And I don't know whether it was a punishment or a promotion, but I was promoted to be in the financial services area, and I was promoted as a manager and moved to New England. And that was another cultural shock, from California to New England. And the life went on, and I lived the American dream and saw a fair amount of success with the challenges that come with a new life and a new challenge. And then 9/11 happened, which fundamentally changed the life and the aspirations and the challenges the Muslims are facing in America. And all of a sudden, all the Muslims were held liable for 9/11. And I kept on saying, you have it wrong. We are not responsible for 9/11. Maybe 7/11, but not 9/11. Maybe you have your numbers mixed up. But on a serious note, I decided to serve on Governor's Advisory Council on Immigrants and Refugees to convey the message in a more civilized manner to some of the immigrants and refugees which were coming as part of our war in the Middle East. And we had to help them settle here and give them a new life. In that process, I was asked by Judge Bailey to be the commencement speaker at the swearing-in ceremony of the new citizens at Faneuil Hall, which is a monumental recognition of an immigrant who was not too long ago was on the other side. For someone to ask me to be the speaker at this prestigious event was a celebration of how we celebrate and acknowledge our immigrants in this country. One of the things that came out of this tragic 9/11 was I was deeply moved, like everyone else, and I was living in a community which was very homogeneous, Dover, Massachusetts. It was very rare for them to see someone with my background in that community. So I contacted the community leadership and the religious leadership in our community and requested them to have an interfaith service, which was on 9/12, the next day of 9/11. Well, initially they were a little baffled that why a Muslim in Dover, Massachusetts would want to have an interfaith service. It was a brand new concept for them. But they subscribed to it. They saw the wisdom, and they were able to call the clergy leadership of the entire community, and we held the service within 24 hours. And it was an amazing experience for the entire community, for have Muslims, Jews, and Christians pray in a church for the first time in the history of that community, bringing together the great monotheistic traditions of Abraham, all in one place, acknowledging that we are one, we are Americans, and this is what it takes for us to survive and come together. And that started the next phase of my test of my grit, and as I call it, grit comes in many different threads, which was the beginning of an interfaith dialogue between Muslims and Jews called the Jewish-Muslim Dialogue of Greater Boston in partnership with the American Jewish Committee. With that experience, I had the opportunity to travel to Israel, which was an amazing experience. Another test of grit where on my end, as a Muslim, I had to go out on the limb and convince my community that in order for us to have a dialogue, in order for us to understand each other's situation, we need to visit each other. We need to see each other's life and challenges and needs. And that's when I understood the need for a homeland for everyone. It was an amazing experience, and that dialogue became a model for several other communities, and that dialogue is still continuing on, which is based on the true American values of opening doors for each other, understanding each other's issues, and solving the problems together at the table. In my line of work, I was faced with similar challenges. The work that I do requires artists, weavers, designers in another part of the world. And they have very little sense of how their work is appreciated in the markets where it's sold. So another test of my grit was to build these bridges in between my people in Pakistan and my people here in US. Because frankly, there are only three players in my business. There are weavers, there are merchants, and kings. Weavers are the artists, and they're independent, and there's a sense of arrogance. And then I have the kings, which are the customers, and they are also arrogant, and they are also independent. And my job is to bring them together, keeping both of them happy on some sound business principles, as well as the sustainability and the ethics that go with that. Another test of grit that is required of immigrants in this great nation. As part of that process, we have started an outreach program for the children. Incidentally, I was also awarded as the Entrepreneur of the Year award by the immigrant community. That was an amazing acknowledgement of the true test of grit that we have to demonstrate to survive. This is part of our outreach program that we have for children, in which in 2 hours we try to expose our children, school-age children, to Middle Eastern history, Islamic art, and the art of rug making. The first hour is teaching the children about how the rugs are designed, made, woven, all the way from creating of the yarn, all the way how it ends up in your home. And the second hour is about the history, culture, and traditions that go into rugs and the stories that they tell. Now, the reason we do that is because this is probably the only opportunity we will get to reach out to children in which they will actually hear, see, feel, and touch about an art form from that part of the world, which will communicate to them the humanity from that part of the world, as opposed to watching it on Fox News and the propaganda that they will be exposed to. So before they get jaded, that would be the appropriate time. And one of the moving experience for me was that one of the schools came to this program with children having name tags which were all Muslim names. So for those 2 hours, they decided to be Muslim children to show their solidarity, to appreciate the art, history, and culture of that part of the world. And that's the kind of America that I believe in, that has survived the test of grits. The other initiative that we have is supporting education in Pakistan. That's one of the biggest challenges that we have, where there are 25 million children that are out of school. Pakistan has the second highest rate of dropout children in the world, and these children become victim to the predatory recruiting tactics by the madrasas, and we all know what the outcome of that process is. We hold events in US, and the support has been absolutely amazing. Another test of our grit to make this place a better place, make this world safe by education, especially catering to the needs of the females in that part of the world. Another test of the grit is when the traditions and cultures of another society are destroyed by war. That is also a test of our grit. Well, in Pakistan, squash is one of those institutions which was destroyed by virtue of the war and the sidelining of the players and the visa issues and so on and so forth. So a squash academy was established in New England to bring in the players from that part of the world and allow them to compete fairly and create a level playing field for them, and allow them the opportunities to be either part of the academic structure here or be part of the economic growth which is the sport is seeing. In the end, I would like to conclude by sharing with you that grit comes in so many different ways, forms, and shapes. The one that we are familiar with is perhaps by John Wayne, True Grit. But I submit to you, in the end, it's about honesty, it's about integrity, it's about taking the less traveled road and facing everyday little challenges at the grassroots level, which will make this world a better place. Thank you very much.